couple things that we have to address. The first thing is that if you look on the homepage, you'll see there's like a clothing drive. That's for like a charity that I work with. And I just collect clothing and fabric and stuff, and then we use that to fund projects that we're going to work on in another country. So I'm taking a bunch of students to Guatemala this summer, and so we're trying to fund. We're laying concrete in people's homes because most of the people in the village that we're going to go work in, they live in homes with like just mud floors, and so we're going to put concrete down. That way they can, not live in mud. That would be nice, right? So if you have extra like clothes, like old clothes, baby clothes, or old fabric, any kind of fabric, it can work. Like any kind of cloth. If you bring them in, you can get some extra credit if you want. I mean, it's not a ton of extra credit. It's not going to be like making up for a test, but it'll make up for some like discussions you've missed or something like that if you don't want to do one of the assignments. Okay, cool.
I have a question about
that. You are not required to participate. It's just you can if you want. What's up, bro?
So my mother has a couple of saris, and there's like the torso part is, I'm pretty sure, like acceptable cloth, but then the sleeves are like kind of this plastic netting material.
I'm sure it's fine. They'll take any kind of clothing, right? They'll take any. What they do is they just get a bulk, like when I went to Nepal a couple of years ago, we gathered 18,000 pounds worth of clothes, and we filled an entire semi truck, right? And what they do is they just sort through it. Anything that they can sell on the market, they sell, like at like thrift shops. Everything else just gets recycled, right? So I'm sure something like that doesn't matter, right? They'll take shoes also. They'll take shoes as well. So yeah, I'm sure stuff like that doesn't matter. You get clothes with like metal on it and stuff, and like belt loops, and just whatever. So that's good. Yeah. So if you want to do that, you're welcome to, but you're not required to. Okay. All right. Second, there is no discussion this week. If you look in the discussions, the discussion is actually your test prompts. I want you guys to take your test by Thursday at midnight. Okay, by Thursday at midnight, the prompts are on there. If on Thursday afternoon, if you guys have some like outlines you want to talk to me about them, we can do that, or you can just schedule another. Like a lot of the people are coming in during apps to talk to me about it. That kind of stuff. Okay, there's no code for the test. You just log in and take the test. Cool. But if you don't take it by Thursday at midnight, then it locks, and I will rewrite new questions Friday morning that you won't get, and there you go. Okay, so my online people who sometimes wait weeks and weeks to take tests, Dhruv and Wentao, I'm looking at the two of you especially, right? You guys oftentimes like to wait for a long time and then take your stuff way late. If you do that, you will not know the prompts. There will be new prompts that I have made up. Am I clear with everybody? Give me a thumbs up if I'm clear. Awesome. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, one last kind of housekeeping thing that I want to address before we get into the formal lesson here is I'm a little bit worried about the Developing Democracies interviews. The first of them are coming up next week. And so you guys are all doing these coming up here pretty darn soon, right? And I only have like 11 out of 55 students who've done the prospectus. So that's what we in the professional teaching business say is not enough. Okay, so these prospectuses were due a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people haven't done them. And so this makes me concerned. A bunch of students have come up and asked me questions about this, and the nature of their questions makes me think that you guys are all kind of collectively not understanding something. So I want to address that really quick and maybe set your mind at ease. Okay. Mike, can you unmute yourself real quick and give me a quick definition of democracy?
A government system where people are guaranteed individual rights and some kind of representation and can participate in and control that representation through like voting and stuff.
Okay. That's pretty solid. It's a pretty solid definition. Give me a thumbs up if you guys think that Mike's definition is correct, either totally or mostly correct. Maybe we could polish the wording a little bit, but functionally it's correct, right? Okay. Mike, you did exactly what I expected you to do. You gave me the definition that is exactly what Mr. Richens asked for you to give him in AP Government and again in AP US History, right? That definition is a very American definition, and it's small. It's kind of a small definition in a way, right? It's a very narrow definition in the way that Americans understand what democracy means, right? Americans almost always will say democracy is a form of government that is, requires the participation of the people, representation and participation of the people, right? Some version of that. My class isn't about the United States, and so we're not tied down to the definition that James Madison gave us in 1776. Like, we're not tied to that definition, okay? My class is an international class, and so we are looking at a much bigger, broader definition of what democracy means. The IB standard is much closer to what the UN standard is, and that standard is that a democracy is a liberal society and the government that maintains that liberal society. Okay, I don't mean liberal like liberal versus conservative. I don't mean that. I mean liberal with a little l, small l liberal. Okay, meaning the people are free. So it's a government that maximizes the freedom and the choice of the individuals, of all the people of the country, right? So it protects the freedoms and the choices of the people of the country, okay? That requires, in order for that to happen, the people must be part of the government. They must be electing officials, must be taking part of the government, right? That's a requirement. But democracy oftentimes doesn't have to, it doesn't have to circle around just the function of government. It's a lot of other things as well. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example here that a lot of students don't fully grasp right away. Okay, in Ireland, they enacted a social healthcare system, socialized medicine healthcare system in 1950, where everybody in Ireland all gets access to the same healthcare, and the healthcare is paid for 100% through taxes. Okay, that is an expansion of democracy. Okay, a socialized medicine system is an expansion of democracy. All right, Yash, can you explain to me how that's an expansion of democracy?
I guess you said that it involves the freedom and the choice of the people. So I guess that, well, I'm not sure exactly how that ties, but I guess if people have the choice to select what type of healthcare they want.
No, you're not going in the right way. Tiffany, can you help him out?
What was the question again?
How does a socialized healthcare system increase the democracy of a country?
I guess it gives the people more like security to their like health. I don't know how to.
Okay,
I-
so it does.
But it gives them like a freedom of security to themselves. So
Okay.
it's like an individual thing.
All right, so it does give security. It does give security and protection for the individuals. That's clear, right? That's clear because you don't have to worry about all these healthcare issues, right? The way that I want you to conceive this, like Yash and Tiff, you guys are both kind of going in the right direction, that it has to be something that is preserving the freedoms and the choices and security of the individuals, right? In a healthcare system, we're talking about economic freedom just as much as we're talking about political freedom. If I make $2,000 a month, but $500 a month go to my healthcare expenses, right? If the government makes a program that takes that $500 and pays for it for me, that gives me 25% of my money back, that I am free to do whatever I want. I can paint a painting, or make a record, or whatever. Go visit go visit Hong Kong or something. You know what I mean? Like I'm free to do what I want with that money. Okay, you have increased my freedom. You've increased my participation in society. Okay, I am now able to get doctor visits and healthcare so I can participate more fully in society. I am now free to spend my money however I want to spend it. Right? That's not a definition of democracy that Americans usually use. Right? Most Americans wouldn't recognize that as democracy. Most Americans would recognize that as something else. Right? In fact, most Americans would probably call it socialism. Right? Most Americans would. I need you to use and think with that IB definition. Okay. So an increase of democracy would be something like water rights in Punjab, or healthcare in Ireland, or women getting the right to divorce in Bihar or the United Provinces, right? That like if women are getting the right to divorce, that maybe doesn't seem like democracy at first, right? But I think we can all recognize that women getting the right to divorce is increasing their freedom, right? It's increasing the freedom of women of India, that they are now free to leave a marriage that is unhappy or abusive or problematic in some way, right? You guys with me on that? I think a lot of you guys are thinking too narrowly about what democracy is, and you need to kind of open your mind a little bit to what democracy is. Democracy is not just the government, it's the entire society. Cool? Is that helpful in trying to think of what your topics are going to be and how you're going to do this? Right? Tiff, I know yours is pretty strong already. Yours is pretty good. I'm not really talking to you as much as I'm talking to the other guys, but a lot of you guys haven't done it yet. And so if you guys are avoiding it for so long, it makes me think that something's wrong, right? It makes me think that maybe you guys didn't understand. Cool? Are we good? Good? Okay. All right, so you have your test by Thursday night. Clothing donations, you can get extra credit if you want. You don't have to, but if you want to, we can do that. And think more broadly about what democracy is as you're working on your project. All right, let's go right into our lesson. Okay, so there's a reading on here. The reading that I gave you, it's Now or Never. This is a reading by Rama Ali Chowdhury. They actually put it anyway, Chowdhury Rama Ali. He is, you're going to want to read this and you're going to want to put in your notes. Okay, so in your notes, I want you to read this and I want you to answer these two questions in your notes. Okay, I want you to summarize the speech. Give me one, or a pamphlet, it's not a speech, pamphlet. Yeah, summarize it in one really good sentence describing the purpose of the document. And then I want you to give me 4 specific demands or complaints that he presents in the document. Okay. He's demanding or complaining about things. Okay. In that complaint, the demand is kind of implied, right? Because he's saying, I don't like this. That's the same thing as saying, I want this to be fixed, right? So a complaint and a demand are very similar in that regard. And so I want you to read this. In class, we read this as a group. We read this in pairs, and then we had a discussion about it. This is an important kind of founding document. It's an important kind of founding document. It's issued in 1933, so it's a little bit behind us in time, but this is important for a couple of reasons. First, it's the first time that we ever see the word Pakistan. Okay, it's the first time we ever see the word Pakistan. He invented the term Pakistan, or is the first to write it down anyway. Okay, so that's one reason why it's important. The next reason why it's important is because this is the first published document asking for 2 states. One of those demands is an independent Pakistan. Okay, and this is in 1933, the beginning of that movement. The idea of two Indias, of an India and a Pakistan, had existed in the minds of like academic, like college professors and stuff for a while. but it didn't really exist in the minds of the people, right? And so Chowdhury kind of puts it into the minds of the people. And after 1933, more and more and more and more of these Muslims are going to start looking at this. We're going through, today we're going to divide India into two. And so this is why you need to kind of understand this root. And he does a really good job of kind of laying out his complaints, why he's pissed off and why he thinks that India and Pakistan can never be together, that the Muslims can never live with the Hindus. Okay, so go ahead and read it on your own, answer those questions into your notes, and then on Thursday I'm gonna come back and ask you for your answers on it. Okay, cool. Okay, all right. So let's get here into this. All right. So
what was
after
the second? What was the second question for that?
Yeah. The second question is 4 specific demands or complaints that he presents in the document.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and just put them in your notes, and then we'll have it as a discussion. And then I don't feel I need to make it a separate assignment. That doesn't. I don't feel compelled to do that. Right? I can trust that you guys will do this. It'll be okay. Okay. So World War II is over, right? Wait. Oh, wait. Did we finish World War II? I think we did not. I think online people didn't finish it. Ilha's saying no. Ilha, what's the last thing you got, man?
We like started to go over the internal divisions with like who supported the Quit India and who opposed it.
All right. Ilha, can you help me out? Did you guys do the Indian National Army with Bose, Subhash Chandra Bose?
I think I don't think we did. Actually, I'm not sure.
No. Tiffany's saying no. Drew's saying no. All right. Okay. Yeah, you guys are a little bit further behind. I try to keep the lectures shorter on Zoom because Zoom sucks. Sorry. Okay. All right. So let's finish off World War II then. Okay. We have India's divided in World War II. We have a significant grouping, like not a majority, but a powerful group who are supporting England and supporting India participating in World War II. And then we have the larger group, much larger group that is supporting India's Quit India movement, Gandhi's Quit India movement, right? One of these loud opposition groups, people who are fighting against the British, is something called the Indian National Army. India National Army. And it's led by this gentleman here with the glasses, Subhash Chandra Bose. All right, so Subhash Chandra Bose is, I would say, an Indian extremist. He's like an Indian nationalist extremist. And he's also a communist, like just straight up Soviet style communist. He is so extreme that in the 1930s, he actually travels to Berlin and allies with the Nazis against the British. And he brings with him a whole bunch of Indians with him. And he goes to Berlin trying to convince the Germans to attack in England. This is before the war starts off, right? He's trying to get Germany to attack England because he thinks that if Germany attacks England, that England will be weaker and India will become independent, right? You guys can already see this dude's like, shaking hands with Nazis. That's what we would say is not a normal behavior pattern, right? He's already some pretty extreme kind of a dude. Once the war breaks out and Germany and England are fighting, Bose kind of recognizes that Germany can't really beat England, not really. So he leaves Germany during the war, during World War II. The Germans transport Bose and all of his men, so about 50 of his men or so, transports them down in a submarine all the way around Africa, all the way past India, and drops them off in the Japanese, drops them off in Indonesia. And Subhash Chandra Bose joins the Japanese army. And he brings with him his Indian National Army to join the Japanese in order to fight the British. right? Go ahead and let that sink in for just a moment, right? So he's leading a unit of Indians to fight the British. And so the Japanese actually start releasing all the Indian POWs to him. And so he starts getting hundreds and hundreds of soldiers. And he's going to send all of those soldiers to invade India. Okay, but he's going to invade, he gives orders to invade India, but only fight the British. Don't fight the Indians, right? He wants to only fight the British, and he is fighting for Indian independence. There's a lot of POWs. India has, I'm sorry, Japan has tens of thousands of Indian POWs. They're all part of the diaspora that we're living in, like Malaysia and Indonesia, right? The diaspora is really strong all throughout Southeast Asia, right? There's like 1/3 of Singapore is Indian, right? And they've all been captured. And so Subhas is leading most of these guys back to India to fight. Lakshmi Sehgal, she's not super important, but I like to include her. She is leading an entire unit. She's leading a regiment, the Rani of Jhansi regiment, an entire regiment of women fighters. She's actually the first woman to lead a regiment of women in a war. Pretty cool, huh? She's not like relatively in like the scale of the war, relatively not important, but I think it's cool. I think it's kind of a cool little moment here. I also like that her unit is named the Rani of Jhansi Regiment, right? You guys remember who Rani of Jhansi is? Raul, do you remember who she is? Who she was?
She was like India's Joan of Arc during 1819.
1850s, yeah, the Sepoy Mutiny. Yeah, yeah, she's like this almost kind of a folklore hero, almost, right? She's an actual historical person, but there's a lot of legend around her, right? Anyway, so Subhas Chandra Bose is also kind of interesting, right? He's fighting in the name of Gandhi. He's fighting in the name of Gandhi. In fact, something that Gandhi is profoundly uncomfortable about, right? Gandhi's like, dude, you're not fighting in my name, right? But he's fighting in the name of Gandhi. He's also interesting because Bose is going to give us the nickname Mahatma Gandhi. He's going to give us that nickname. He's the first person to use the name Mahatma, or the nickname Mahatma. You guys remember what Mahatma means? Dhruv, you remember? What does it mean? Dhruv's saying don't. Yash says never ask me things about India, right? Wentao, do you remember what Mahatma means?
Not really, but is it saint or like father? Something?
Yeah, kind of. It's like great one. It's like the great one, right? It's kind of like saint. It's kind of like how Europeans use the word saint, kind of, right? Mohandas Gandhi is his name, but Mahatma is what most people call him. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that this somewhat crazy Nazi sympathizing dude is the guy who gives Gandhi his nickname, right? That Gandhi has denounced him actually. Gandhi's like, dude, you're not on my side. Like, I'm not on the side of like allying with the Japanese and the Nazis, right? Anyway, the war is starting to come to an end. If you think in your map here, right, we have India. Let me see if I got a map. Ugh. All right, I got to go all the way back to find a map for you. Okay, so if you're looking at our map here, right, this over here is Burma. The Japanese have invaded all the way into Burma and they're making their way towards Bengal. Okay, so we have the state of Assam and the state of Bengal, and the Japanese are making their way over here. As the Japanese are making their way over to Bengal and Assam, right, the British are going to use a tactic called the scorched earth tactic. You guys know what scorched earth means in a war sense? Does anyone know? Give me a thumbs down if you have no idea. If you're pretty sure you don't know. Ilha, what do you think it is, man?
Isn't it just like making like everything like desolate for one side, so like destroying everything on
Yeah.
that side, basically.
Why do you do it? Why do it?
J- Just to like prohibit them from like doing anything or gaining anything.
Perfect.
So just to weaken the other side. Right?
Perfect. Nicely done. The British implement something called a scorched earth tactic, and that's where it's a defensive tactic where you basically destroy everything as you retreat. That way, when the enemy conquers it, they got nothing. They have no supplies. So you burn the farms so they can't eat the food. Okay? The British do that in Bengal. They burn the farms, and even more controversially, they sink all the fishing boats. Right? The boats are like an important part. When the Bengalese talk about this, they talk about the boats, that they're extra upset about the boats. And the British go through and drill holes into the bottom of all the Bengali boats and sink them in the water there, and then burn the land, because they don't want the Japanese getting their hands on the sweet farmland, right? Bengal and Assam are like the best farmland on earth, just about, right? Some of the best farmland on the planet, right? Certainly the best farmland in India. And the result is the British also don't withdraw the Bengali people. They leave the people there, but destroy the people's food and their ability to make food. The result is about 2.5 to 3 million people die. Okay, Bengal gets the famine of 1943, and the Bengali famine is the worst famine ever recorded in Indian history, and it kills more than 2 million people, almost 3 million people. Okay, and this is a famine caused by the British, as the British destroyed all this stuff. The Bengalis are extra upset about the boats because they argue, why couldn't you just take the boats down the coast and then bring them back? Right? They're like, you didn't have to destroy the boats. You could have just sailed the boats away. Right? From that division that we were talking about between the Indians, where some of them are supporting England and some of them are not, this famine turns India, right? India basically is 100% against the British at this point. Okay, and this famine is really bad. Here's the worst part about the famine, I think. The worst part about the famine is that the Japanese never actually invade. The British did the famine, and then the Japanese had to turn back. They never actually invaded Bengal. They never invaded Assam or Bengal. They never invaded India. And the reason is because the United States finally had gotten into the war and had been fighting the Japanese and stuff. And so the Japanese had to start withdrawing, right? They were starting to fight in the Pacific, and the Americans were starting to sink Japanese ships and stuff. And so the Japanese and the Australians. And so the Japanese were having to, retreat. Okay. The war, World War II ends with the Allies winning, of course. But India is not really part of the Allies. India is mostly just in protest by the end of the war, right? By the end of the war, India is like, no, hell no, we're not part of this anymore. And the war ends with Great Britain saying India will be free. Great Britain has too much debt. It's too stretched out. India's independence movement is too strong. England basically just says, we're done. You guys are going to be independent. And so at this point, England is going to come up with what they think is a 5-year plan to give India its independence, right? They believe it's going to take 5 years. They want India to become independent with a stable government that's not going to just collapse. It's not going to be invaded. It's not going to become communist, right? And it's not going to just delve into a civil war. So that's what it is. England is no longer saying, can India become independent? England is saying, yes, India will be independent. We're just trying to negotiate what that independence looks like. Okay, so 1946, the war is over in August of 1945. 1946, the new prime minister, Clement Attlee, we met him once before, right? Clement Attlee, Winston Churchill resigns and Clement Attlee becomes the new prime minister. He travels to India with his boy Stafford Cripps. We've also seen him before too, right? He's the leader of the parliament and he's the prime minister. So they arrive in India in something called the cabinet mission. And in the cabinet mission, they are all they are all saying, what will independence look like? And so they're trying to negotiate a unified India. They want India to stay unified. They don't want to do states if they can avoid it. So they actually come up with a three-tiered system, a three-tiered federalist system. Okay, so you guys remember what federalism is in AP government? Yeah, Drew?
Isn't it just where the nation is just divided into individual states, with each
Yeah.
government, with an individual system of government in each state?
Right, right. So federalism, yes, federalism means that there is multiple levels of government. The local state government, what we in the United States would call a state, right? A state or a province or a district has a relationship with the national government, right? Certain duties go to the national, certain duties go to the state, right? Okay. So India gets a three-tiered federalist system. On the top tier, we have the federal government. That's the national government, right? That's things like the military and stuff like that, okay? On the bottom tier, we have the individual states. The middle tier is the group tier. And this is where individual states are grouped together in order to give them like collective bargaining and collective protection. Okay? This may seem kind of wacky, right? What they're trying to do is recreate the UK, the government of the United Kingdom, right? Because United Kingdom has this kind of three-tiered system. They have the UK on the top, and then underneath it, they have like England, Scotland, Wales, and North Ireland. And then underneath that, they have like the 4 parts of Scotland and the 12 parts of England and the 3 parts of Wales. You know what I mean? That's what they're trying to create here, is something that looks like that. So they divide India into 3 groups. Group A is this dark green group over here. Okay, Group A is this dark green group over here. Group B is and these are, I'm sorry, the Muslims. These are the West India Muslims, Northwest Muslims. Group B is these light green groups over here. These are the Eastern Muslims. Group C is all the red ones. Those are the Hindus. Right? You guys see some problems with this plan already? Right? Tiffany, what's the problems that you see already? Right off the bat.
Well, I mean, if they're going by like religion, what about all the Muslims that live in like the Hindu areas and stuff like that? Like, how does that affect their living situation or
Okay.
how they're, yeah.
Okay, so that could be a problem, right? Right. What else? That could be a problem, and that actually, Tiffany, that is going to become a problem in just a moment. Yeah. Yash, what other problems do you see?
I guess like they're not connected. There's a lot of gaps everywhere, and also the size of the groups are different. So they're not supposed to have equal representation.
Yeah. So they can't possibly be equal, right? Because that group C alone is like 65% of the population, right? It's huge. It's massive, right? Just the United Provinces by themselves, just Uttar Pradesh, the United Provinces, is larger than all of the Muslim states combined, right? So we got a problem here, right? So first off, these groups are not equal, even close, right? Second off, what's up with all this yellow? That's the princely states. The princely states aren't part of a group. The princely states skip that third tier. They skip the third tier. They have like a direct relationship with the federal government, right? I told you that these princely states were going to cause a problem. Well, here we are. We're arriving into problem land. Okay, so we got a big problem, right? First off, these things are jacked up, right? We got princely states all over the place. This group 3 is a huge mess. I mean, none of these groups make any sense really. Okay. Jinnah agrees to the plan. Okay. He is concerned about protection versus the Hindus, right? He wants the Muslim minority of the country to be protected from the evil Hindus at the top, right? He doesn't want the Hindus to crush them, and he doesn't trust the Hindus. Okay. Nehru initially agrees to this. Okay. Gandhi is basically just telling everyone to get along and be unified, right? But Gandhi at this point is mostly just like spending time in his room meditating about stuff, right? Gandhi's not really a negotiating politician. He's not really like that. He's more of like this like inspirational kind of cultural political figure, right? Nehru is the one doing all the legwork. Nehru is the one doing all the negotiations, right? Nehru is the one writing the Constitution. And so Nehru approves of this. Nehru and Jinnah approve of this, but then we run into a problem because Nehru starts talking to the state governments here, and the state governments can't agree on anything. Madras down here says, what if we don't want to join Group C? We don't want to join Group C. We want to make our own group. And Nehru says, well, you guys don't have to join Group 3. We can negotiate that later, right? Jinnah hears that, and Jinnah takes that as duplicitous. He says that that's evidence of the fact that the Indians are being duplicitous and that they're hiding and that they're lying and that the Hindus are liars. And so Jinnah withdraws, and he orders all of the Muslim leaders to withdraw from the negotiation. And Jinnah says, in closed doors, Nehru agrees. But as soon as Nehru has to talk to his friends, he doesn't agree. That's evidence that Nehru doesn't actually belong here, right? And so they get in this huge fight. Jinnah withdraws from it, Nehru withdraws from it, and we are off to the races. We are going to be 2 states. At this point in time, we are done. There's no unified India. We are going to be 2 states, okay? As soon as Jinnah withdraws, keep this in the same big number, okay? So the 1946 cabinet mission is 1. As soon as Jinnah withdraws, we're going to get something called the Direct Action Day. As soon as this constituent assembly, this is the group that is dividing India, right? And Jinnah starts to call for withdrawal, and this turns into violence. Violence breaks out on Direct Action Day. It's 1946, and this is directly because of Jinnah withdrawing. That when he does that, Muslims in Calcutta come out and start to protest. Hindus in Calcutta come out and start to protest as well, right? And these clashes turn into violence as Hindus start to attack and kill the Muslims. Okay? We're going to end up with 4,000 people killed, 4,000 plus people killed, and 100,000 people made homeless in just a couple of days worth of rioting. And of those 4,000 dead, about 3/4, more than 3/4 of them are Muslims. This is mostly Hindus killing Muslims. And it's in Calcutta. This is so shocking and so bloody, and it kind of represents the anger and the hurt feelings and the tension, right? Everything is boiling right now, right? Like if I lift up the pot, if I lift the lid off of any of these pots, it's going to boil over and burn me, right? Everything is at maximum tension across the entire country. We already know one protest turns into 4,000 people killed. Okay. This becomes clear to the British. The British say, we can't have this anymore. We're just going to divide this and go. The British say, we can't wait 5 years. You have 4 months. The British Prime Minister says, nope, 4 months, India's gone. Psh, we're gone, 4 months. And so the British bring in, like geographers to come and draw the borders because they have to figure out what these borders are. And so And so this is what we call the partition of India. Okay, make this the next big letter, big number, partition of India. You should be on like CC probably, or DD, somewhere around there. What time do we got? I need to see if we have enough time for partition. Okay, we don't have enough time for partition. My mock trial's coming into my room in 3 minutes. So we're gonna leave this here. We'll go through the details of partition, but I'm gonna tell you now, it's a huge mess. It's a huge mess, and it's gonna result in a lot of bloodshed. Okay, do any of you guys have questions about these things that we did today? Okay, are we good? Okay, if you have no other questions, then you guys are free to go, and I'll post the video up. Yeah, Ro?
Where are the prompts for the test?
They're on the discussions. It's listed as the discussion this week. If
Oh,
you look in
okay.
the modules, you should see it's listed in the modules as well.
Okay.
Cool. Anyone else? All right. On that note, I'll see you guys later.